In 1553, the most beloved prince in the Ottoman Empire walked into his father's military tent. He never walked out alive. What happened inside that tent would haunt the Sultan for the rest of his life. This is the true story of Prince Mustafa, the perfect heir, who was murdered by the most powerful man in the world, his own father. The Ottoman Empire in the 16th century was the most powerful force on earth. It stretched across 3 continents, from the gates of Vienna to the deserts of Arabia. At its head stood Sultan Suleiman, known to history as the Magnificent. But Suleiman had a problem that would destroy the person he loved most in the world. In 1515, a son was born to Sultan Suleiman. The mother was Mahidevran, his first concubine. They named the boy Mustafa. From the moment of his birth, everyone knew this child was special. Prince Mustafa grew into everything an Ottoman heir should be. He was tall, handsome, and charismatic. He excelled in military training and showed wisdom beyond his years. The soldiers adored him. The people loved him. Even foreign ambassadors wrote letters praising his virtues. Venetian ambassadors described Mustafa as remarkably intelligent and prudent. Persian spies reported that he was beloved by all. The common people called him Sultan Mustafa even though his father still ruled. This was the highest compliment they could give. By the age of 20, Mustafa was appointed governor of Manisa, one of the empire's most important provinces. This was the traditional training ground for future sultans. Everyone assumed Mustafa would one day rule the greatest empire in the world. But in the shadows of the Imperial harem, a conspiracy was growing. And at its center was a woman who would change everything. Her name was Hurrem Sultan, known to history as Roxelana. She was Suleiman's legal wife, something that hadn't happened in the Ottoman Empire for centuries. She had given Suleiman 4 sons, and she wanted one of them to become Sultan, not Mustafa. The problem was clear. Mustafa was older, more popular, and the obvious choice. As long as Mustafa lived, Roxelana's sons would never rule. Something had to be done. Roxelana began a careful campaign of psychological warfare. She whispered doubts into Suleiman's ear. "The soldiers love Mustafa more than they love you," she would say. "What if he decides not to wait for you to die?" She reminded Suleiman of Ottoman history, of princes who had rebelled against their fathers, of civil wars that had torn the empire apart. "Mustafa is becoming too powerful," she warned. "Too beloved, too dangerous." At first, Suleiman dismissed these concerns. Mustafa was his favorite son, the boy he had trained personally, the heir he had groomed for the throne. Surely, Roxelana was simply trying to promote her own children. But Roxelana was patient. She planted seeds of doubt for years. She fabricated letters. She bribed officials to report false intelligence. She created an entire narrative of treachery where none existed. The turning point came in 1553. The Ottoman Empire was at war with Persia. Suleiman led his army east, and the military campaign brought them near Mustafa's province. This was the moment Roxelana had been waiting for. She convinced Suleiman that Mustafa was planning to use the war as cover for rebellion. "He has the support of the Janissaries," she whispered. "He's gathering allies. He's waiting for the right moment to strike." Grand Vizier Rustem Pasha, who was married to Roxelana's daughter, supported every accusation. Together, they wove a web of lies so convincing that even Suleiman began to believe them. Historical documents show that Suleiman struggled with this decision. He was torn between fatherly love and the survival of the empire. But, in the Ottoman tradition, there was a brutal law: better to execute an innocent prince than risk civil war. In October 1553, Suleiman's army made camp at Aragli, in central Anatolia. The Sultan sent a message to his son. "Come to the military camp," the message said. I wish to see you before the campaign continues." Mustafa knew this summons was dangerous. His advisors begged him not to go. "It's a trap," they warned. "Your stepmother wants you dead. Don't walk into her snare." But Mustafa faced an impossible choice. If he refused his father's summons, it would be seen as an act of rebellion. It would prove the accusations against him. If he went, he might be walking to his death. Prince Mustafa made his decision. He would go. He would face his father and prove his loyalty. He truly believed his innocence would protect him. On the morning of October 6, 1553, Prince Mustafa entered his father's tent. He was surrounded by his father's guards, as protocol demanded. The Janissaries who loved Mustafa waited outside, watching anxiously. What happened next was described by multiple eyewitnesses. As Mustafa knelt to kiss his father's hand, showing respect and submission, Suleiman gave a signal. 7 deaf-mute executioners emerged from behind a curtain. In Ottoman tradition, deaf-mutes were used as executioners because they couldn't hear the victims' pleas or share what they witnessed. The executioners seized Mustafa. He fought back with the strength of a warrior prince, throwing off several attackers. He called out to his father, but Suleiman sat silently, watching. Mustafa was thrown to the ground. A silk bowstring was wrapped around his neck. This was the traditional method of royal execution in the Ottoman Empire. Princes were never killed with blades, as royal blood could not be shed. Prince Mustafa struggled as the bowstring tightened. His eyes remained on his father the entire time. Historical accounts say that Suleiman turned away, unable to watch his son's final moments. When it was over, Mustafa's body was left in the tent. He was 38 years old. The most beloved prince in the empire was dead by his father's command. Outside the tent, the Janissaries heard the commotion. When they learned what had happened, the entire army erupted in fury. These elite soldiers had loved Mustafa like a brother. They had expected him to lead them to glory. The Janissaries surrounded Suleiman's tent, demanding justice. They called for the heads of Rustem, Pacha, and anyone else involved in the conspiracy. For a moment, it seemed the army would mutiny against their sultan. Suleiman was forced to dismiss Rustem Pasha to calm the soldiers. He also had to execute several officials as scapegoats. But the damage was done. The army's faith in their sultan was shattered. Mustafa's mother, Mahidevran, received the news with devastating grief. She had lost her only son, her purpose, her future. She retired to Bursa, where Mustafa was buried, and spent the rest of her life in mourning. The common people of the empire mourned as if they had lost their own child. Poets wrote elegies. Songs were sung about the murdered prince. A famous poem of the time said, "The sun has set at noon." But the true tragedy was only beginning. Mustafa's execution didn't secure the succession. It destroyed it. 3 years later, in 1556, 2 of Roxelana's sons died in a civil war fighting each other. The very thing Suleiman had tried to prevent by killing Mustafa happened anyway. The son who eventually became Sultan, Selim II, was known as Selim the Drunk. He was weak, incompetent, and nearly destroyed everything Suleiman had built. Historians agree that if Mustafa had ruled instead, the Ottoman Empire would have remained strong for generations longer. Suleiman himself was never the same after Mustafa's death. Witnesses reported that he aged rapidly. His campaigns became less successful. His judgment seemed impaired. Some historians believe he suffered from what we would now call depression and guilt. Even Roxelana, the architect of Mustafa's destruction, didn't live to see her plans fulfilled. She died in 1558, just 5 years after Mustafa's execution. The question that haunts history is simple. Was Mustafa really plotting rebellion? Modern historians have examined all the evidence. Letters, reports, witness testimonies. The overwhelming consensus is clear. Mustafa was innocent. There was never any real plot. No army gathered for rebellion. No alliance with Persia. No plan to overthrow his father. Every accusation was fabricated. Every letter was forged. Every report was false. Suleiman the Magnificent, the greatest sultan in Ottoman history, murdered his own son based on lies, and he knew it. Historical records suggest that Suleiman realized the truth too late, which explains his decline in his final years. The execution of Prince Mustafa marked a turning point for the Ottoman Empire. It showed that even the greatest rulers could make catastrophic mistakes, that palace intrigue could destroy dynasties, that jealousy and ambition could triumph over love and merit. Mustafa's grave in Bursa became a pilgrimage site. For centuries, people visited to honor the prince who should have been sultan. Even today, Turkish people remember him as the greatest ruler the empire never had. The story of Prince Mustafa teaches us something profound about power and family. That sometimes the people closest to the throne are the most dangerous. That lies told often enough can become truth. That even a father's love can be poisoned by doubt and fear. In the end, Suleiman's attempt to secure his empire by killing his best son led to its gradual decline. The execution that was meant to prevent disaster became the disaster itself. If you found this tragic story compelling, subscribe to Imperial Secrets for more hidden truths from history's greatest empires. Next time, we reveal the night one sultan executed 19 of his own brothers to secure the throne. The deadliest succession in history awaits you.